There are no scheduled fire drills tonight, so in the event of the fire alarm sounding, please leave the building via the main spiral staircase and through the main reception doors. Once outside, please turn left and make your way to the fire assembly point located beyond the multi-story car park on Exchange Road. If you are unable to use the stairs, please wait in the council chamber and you will be guided by a member of staff of the evacuation lift. This meeting is being live streamed via the council's YouTube channel. Please note that there is no comments function available as part of this webcasting. The council is the data controller and will retain the data collected during this webcast. This will be done so in accordance with the council's published data retention policy. Any members of the public seated in the public gallery should be aware that by entering the chamber, they are consenting to their image being captured by the automated camera system. Recordings will be used for webcasting and/or training purposes. Councillors are reminded to take note of what is displayed on the screen in the room, as these show what is being recorded and webcast. Cameras are currently set to capture you in seated positions, so please remain seated when speaking. You can request to speak by pressing the button with the face on it and the microphone will go blue. Councillors have received an electronic copy of the relevant paperwork for this meeting. The public agenda for this meeting is available on the council's website. Before we start the formal agenda, I'm going to call for a moment of silence in memory of those who have sadly passed since our last ordinary full council meeting. These are former Mayor and Councillor Bill Ward, former Chairman of the Council and Councillor Barbara Anderson, former Councillors Ken Trussell and Carol Murdoch, and also former Crawley and Horsham MP Peter Horden. I now call for a period of silence. I will now invite those councillors who have informed me in advance that they wish to say a few words in memory of those who have recently passed. I will take them as listed in the order paper. Councillor Chris Mullins and Crowe first to speak on Bill Ward.
Thank you, Mayor. I never imagined in my life, because Bill was a couple of years younger than me, that I would have to say anything like this in his memory. He always seemed so much healthier than me and so much fitter. who was so different to me in many ways physically. But we had a liking of minds and we were good friends and we got on together. Bill was a councillor from 83 when I first got on, and he went right through with breaks until 2016. He was mayor of the Borough from 86 to 87. And Bill, when he worked on the council, dedicated to everything he done, including being the chair of the OSC as his final contribution to the council. Sometimes in your life you meet special people and they have a different effect on you than a lot of people that you meet. And Bill was one of those for me. As the years went past, we met back in 1974. We grew closer and closer together and shared so much in our politics and our beliefs and our understanding of how we saw the world and how nasty we thought greed was, which caused most of the problems in the world. And Bill was very religious, where I'm not so religious, and Bill would always be a Christian first, so he would be a Christian socialist, and his Christianity took him to socialism because he believed that through socialism was the answer and it was part of Christianity. Bill was a humanity person. He believed in human beings, and he used to say to me, human beings, all of them have got good in them, and we just have to find that good in them and bring that out and talk to them and use their goodness to get through to them. Bill just did believe in people, and he spent the whole of his life serving his fellow human beings, and all of the work activities that he undertook, all of the jobs that he did were about caring for other people. He worked for a long time on the council, then he went into social type services. I worked with him for about 18 months at Outreach Freeway, and it really gave me a fuller understanding of his humanity and his understanding of people with learning difficulties. At Outreach Freeway were the people who had Down's disease, Down's syndrome, shouldn't say that, it's syndrome, and other problems, birth defects and all sorts of things. And they came together at Outreach Freeway, or Ifield Hall is the other way of saying it, and they spent their day there doing what a lot of them believed was work, a lot of them believed they were being educated, and they were. I mean, there was all sorts of things. Bill was a qualified teacher, but he spent his life in Ifield Hall teaching those people who had learning difficulties and caring for them and looking after them. He was a dedicated person, and I think everybody in life leaves a legacy. In my view, Bill's legacy is very large. It's a big legacy of people who care about him, who remember him for the good that he did in life. And for me, he taught me an awful lot. He came to me one day after I left BT, I was an engineer, and said, would I come and work down at Ifield Hall and drive the minibus? And I said, well, I've never done anything like that before. He said, come down and have a look. So he took me down there, and I said to Bill, well, okay, I'll give it a go. So it was a 16-seater bus, including the driver. So I used to drive around, all around the circuit of Crawley, picking up these different people with their different problems, with their learning difficulties. And I would bring them in to Ifield Hall, and they would spend the day there, and then my job was to come back in the evening and take them home again. But life was never as simple as that with Bill. So when I dropped them off in the morning, he said, come on, why don't you come and have a coffee with me? And I'd have to go have a coffee, and then I got a tour of all the classrooms and centres, and he showed me around, introduced me to everybody, and I started to meet all of what I suppose were called service users in those days, and got to know an awful lot of people, and and they had things like a garden centre down there and all sorts of things like that going on, and they used to go to a lot of festivals to sell their wares and things that they produced down there. It was a wonderful place, and Bill seemed to be in charge of it, although he wasn't. He was the day manager and teacher, and there was obviously a board sitting over him. But, I mean, when I looked at Bill's life, and perhaps even compared it to mine, I realised that he actually had a very plain life. He wasn't a man that liked to gather together the latest bit of electronics or this sort of stuff. It never interested him. He wasn't like that. He lived a plain, honest life, and living the life that he believed he should live. And I suppose, in a sense, it was a very godly life that he led. And with his wife Christine, they were very strict practicing Catholics, and he couldn't quite get through to me. He used to call me a cultural Catholic because I was brought up as a Catholic, and although I have every empathy and sympathy for and support for the religion, I don't feel as dedicated to that religion as he did, and he was. So now, I think that he's left us. He will be where he wanted to be. He'll be in heaven with the Lord, and that's what he would have believed. And that's what I like to believe for him as well. Bill was a wonderful person, a person worth remembering, a person worth understanding, and a person carrying great respect for. I miss him, and I will miss him always. Rest in peace, Bill. God bless you.
Councillor Crowe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was saddened to learn of the passing of Bill Ward, and on behalf of the Conservative Group, we extend our condolences for the passing of Bill. I remember Bill in my first year as a councillor, when him and Councillor Mullins were the dynamic duo for Gossip's Green, I recall. And I always remember as a new councillor in 2003 that Bill was very likeable and very approachable. He was the cabinet member for community engagement at the time, and I always remember he was always willing to have a chat, and to me as a new opposition councillor, and I always found him very amenable and very pleasant to deal with. Councillor Mullins has mentioned his Christian faith, and I recall Bill had a strong connection with the Friary in the town centre, I recall. I also remember when he came back as a councillor for West Green, I recall, and it was quite funny because I think the year he came back, the Conservative candidate lived literally next door to him, and they were both standing for West Green, and you'd literally go to his road and you'd see, when I visited our candidate, and you'd see the poster in our candidate's window, the poster in Bill's window, and he was successful, but he was a very fine individual. I think only myself and Councillor Burgess and Lanza recall him, but he has been taken too soon, I would say, and he was a lovely chap, and he was a credit to himself and to this council, and I can see certainly from him, from what Councillor Mullins has said, that he will be very sadly missed. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ian Irvine to speak on Barbara Anderson.
Oh, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm not going to take up a lot of your time tonight, which I think Barbara Anderson herself would appreciate, because she wasn't a woman who was given to long, flowery speeches. She's more a sort of can-do, let's get things done woman. And I have to say that I didn't actually know her in all her time in local government. So I tried to find out today a bit about what she'd done, as a councillor, and I discovered that she was first elected in 1973 in Three Bridges, and at the same time she was elected to the county council representing Gossip's Green, I think possibly her local government experience started before that, because she was also chairman of the old Crawley Urban District Council, and all of those things at a time when it was quite difficult for women to get elected into local government. So to that extent, she was certainly something of a trailblazer. I first knew her a few years later, after she retired from local government. She re-emerged into local politics as the chair of the Crawley Constituency Labour Party at the time when our local Labour Party was going through one of its livelier phases. And she was a very unifying presence, and I found her very tolerant and inspiring and caring. All good qualities for a chair, and all qualities which she must have had all during her time in local government. So it's for those reasons, of the fact that ultimately I think she was just a very kind person. Those are the reasons why I will remember her.
Thank you. Councillor Crowe to speak on Ken Trussell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was very saddened to hear of the passing of Councillor Ken Trussell, who served this council as councillor for Maidenbower from 2010 to 2017, and he was also cabinet member for environmental services during the Conservative administration from 2011 to 2014. Ken was a lovely chap. He had a great sense of humour, and if you got to know him, I had many an interesting and enjoyable conversation with Ken. He knew a lot of people, as I found out just the other day. He introduced Councillor Jaggard, who sadly can't be with us this evening, to be a candidate. They used to play tennis together every Sunday morning, which is something that I didn't know. But Ken also brought other candidates to stand for the Conservatives as well, which is something that I mentioned about Councillor Borough on Friday evening's extraordinary full council meeting, how he brought me in. But Ken brought in Councillor Jaggard plus two other candidates who stood for us. And Ken really enjoyed his time on the council, and he particularly enjoyed his cabinet role for environmental services. He was always talking to me about what he was looking to try and achieve and the things he was doing. And he did this at a time when he was caring for his late wife Gronya, who had some sort of quite serious health difficulties, and even at quite an advanced age, Ken was a very dedicated carer for his wife, who sadly she passed away a few years ago. I will say Ken suffered from dementia, which is something I've happened to former councillors. It's a very cruel disease, and it has taken away the quality from his later years in life. But I think myself and all the members in the Conservative group, and I'm sure Labour group as well, who remember Ken, will have fond memories of his time here as a council, as a very friendly and approachable individual, and a very dedicated councillor. And like everybody else this evening, will be very sadly missed. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On behalf of the Labour Group, I'd like to express our deep sadness at this news. Ken was always good-humoured. Whenever I spoke to him, always got on incredibly well with him. I always thought he had, Madam Mayor, a dry philosophical approach to local government that certainly helped immensely during what I can recall some turbulent times for the council when he was on the cabinet. We were sad to hear of his passing, and as has been said, perhaps a little sooner than it should have been. But he had a solid reputation across the council and was widely respected. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hilton and Lanza to speak on Carol Murdoch.
I'll speak first, Councillor Lanza, if I may. I hadn't really spoken much to Carol in the last few years. I had a brief phone call with her about 3 years ago, so I'm very sad to hear about her passing. I didn't go to a funeral, but I know people from our side did. I think former Councillor Lord Moffat, an MP, went, and I think Councillor Lanza and former Councillor Richard Barrett went as well. And I know from speaking to Richard, he got on very well with her and visited her on many occasions. So really, I'd like to kind of confine my comments to when I was a councillor with Carol Murdoch and she was a councillor. Obviously, although she was also known as the wife of Councillor Doug Murdoch, she was very much a councillor in her own right. She was formidable, she was a staunch socialist right to the end, with very strong principles, with a real passion to helping vulnerable people, and during her time as Chair of Housing, Council Lieutenant, she really did want to put them first. She first came to Crawley in the 80s as part of the, quite like Fallswood now, from the London boroughs, particularly I think it was London Borough, once Dartford West, and she was one of the first people with her and Doug to really get involved in the wider community and the council, so she was kind of quite a pioneer for that. I first met Carol in 1989 when I was first elected to the county council. Carol had been re-elected then, she'd been elected in 1985, and we did one term together, so she was in the county council from 85 to 93, and she was the social services spokesman. Well, anyone who's ever sat on a social services committee will know how difficult job that is, because it's so much to it. And there was challenges then, particularly through the Children's Act and care in the community, but you know, there were some big hitters on our side then, and she was one of them. And so it was no surprise a year later then when she made the Broadfield Dream Team with me, Councillor Moffat and herself, and she was a councillor for Broadfield from 1990 to 1994. Now, I was probably one of the people, and I can't remember if she actually was on the council committee before, but when Ian Irvine was made mayor in 92-93 and Frank Pegler lost his seat in Three Bridges 92, there was a couple of vacancies for chair and vice chair, and you know, and for some unbeknown reason, I became elected vice chair, and Carol became the chair. And again, there was challenges, not the challenges of the housing emergency we got now, more challenges of seeping housing stock because of the right to buy, and particularly as, although we had loads of receipts and we weren't always able to use it, so we had issues to do with looking at things like shared ownership and also working in partnership with housing associations. And although we had some quite strong discussions, I thought we were quite a good team. We got on very well. And what was good about Carol particularly was that partly because of she had some health problems and she was training to be a nurse quite late in life. And I think she had health problems with her mum Elsie Beadsworth, who sadly died, I think, during that period in 93, I think. We achieved a lot, and we got on, and I was allowed to kind of chair meetings, and she really, when she believed in something, she went for it and she really discussed it, and she held her own Labour group, and she was a real champion for the tenants. And I always like to think that I hope I was a worthy successor, because after she retired in 94, I took over the mantle as chair. But the great wisdom and discussions we had then really stood me in good stead for those 4 years. So it's very sad. She was a real family person, and with, obviously it's ironic that I came on the council this year and I stood against her son Neil. You know, I would never be sure whether Carol would have voted for me or not, but that's really another matter. But very sad to hear, and I hope she's, you know, rest in peace.
Thank you. Councillor Lanza.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And as Councillor Hilton said, I was one of the people attending Carol Murdoch's funeral, and it came across very clear in the remarks made there just what a strong personality and what such great strength of character that she had. And she was indeed a strong socialist. In terms of West Sussex County Council, and I'll mention the division, it was the Bewbush and Ifield West Division from 1985 to 93, and also Crawley Borough Council, Broadfield Ward 1990 to 94. And in that role, as Councillor Hilton alluded to, she chaired the Housing Committee, and she was a very effective and fair-minded chair of that committee, with strong beliefs about what we should be doing for our tenants. Also, although not mentioned so far, Carol's husband Doug was Mayor of Crawley in 1994 to 95, and therefore Carol was mayoress in that council year, although she was no longer a councillor herself. She was also a non-executive director of the Crawley Primary Care Trust. We used to have one of those in Crawley from 2002 to 2004. So quite a broad range of local government and community experience in the service of Crawley. And another point I would make, aligned to strength of character, strength of belief, is that sometimes in politics, when you're being criticised by someone with kind of equal and opposite views to your own, sometimes the criticism can be so subtle that you don't realise someone's having a go at you. I can safely say that Carol never fell into that particular trap. Thank you.
Councillor Lancer to speak on Sir Peter Horden, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Now, we've referred to Sir Peter Horden as being MP for a constituency that included Crawley as a major part, but in addition to that, he was an MP over a very substantial period from 1964 to 1997, with really three constituencies, but they always included Horsham, and of course from 1974 to 83 it was the Crawley and Horsham constituency. He had a long and accomplished and varied life, and passed away on his 95th birthday this year. And he was well respected as a charming person, regardless of any political differences, a real gentleman. And amongst his other achievements, in 1993 he was appointed as a Privy Councillor, and he was also a Deputy Lieutenant of West Sussex. Politically, he was and would have described himself as a monetarist, I suppose, even before Margaret Thatcher was identified as such. But as an interesting combination these days, he was also a rather staunch Europhile, very much a supporter of our engagement with Europe. As am I to a considerable extent as well. And so he was never made a minister. And again, some political pundits have commented that he was perhaps the most able Conservative never to be appointed as a minister, which is kind of an interesting remark to reflect upon. But he was a prominent member of the Backbench 1922 committee, and indeed became its secretary. So he's had a really substantial period of service to the Crawley community, and for that matter the wider Horsham community, and wider than that, because at one time his constituency stretched as far as Petworth. So we're thankful for his service as an MP over such an extended period to our community. Thank you.
Thank you. As there are no further speakers, we will now start the agenda. Are there any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Ashraf, Councillor Jaggard, Councillor Yasmin Khan, Councillor Lamb. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors' interest notified in advance of the meeting are set out from the page 5 in the supplementary agenda order paper. I understand that we have question from taxi trade. I would like to declare an interest as a private hire taxi operator for Crawley Borough Council. Are there any further interest councillors wish to declare? Councillor Rana.
Yes, Madam Mayor. So my husband is a taxi driver. He works at the airport.
The minutes of the last full council meeting held on 24th May 2024 are on pages 5 to 20, subject to the minor change set out in the order paper. Are those set of minutes as amended agreed? Thank you. I will now provide you with the mayoral update. I've picked out a few events. Over the past couple of weeks, I have had the privilege to attend these special events, especially the 80th D-Day anniversary, Windrush Day, the Whole Theatre Community Award and Armed Forces Day, and many more. It was truly an honor to be able to take part in such events as they have made a mark in history. Windrush Day event happened at the Crawley Museum. It was a unique experience seeing many people's different journeys into the UK and having a day to encourage communities across the country to celebrate the contribution of the Windrush generation and their descendants. The 80th D-Day anniversary happened at Tilgate Park. I had the honor to light the beacon and pay respect to those who had lost their lives and those who had made the sacrifices. We also had the Whole Theatre Community Awards. This was quite an experience meeting. The volunteers who takes their time to go above and beyond to help their community needs and just being an inspiration to the younger generation. It was an incredible opportunity that Crawley Borough Council put together to recognise these individuals and celebrate them. On to the Cabinet members' announcements. Councillor Sue Mullins, Cabinet Member of Community Engagement and Culture, please introduce your communication regarding Tilgate Round the Lake Festival.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Before I do that, I do have an extra communication to tell everybody about, and that's passed from the Crawley Military Partnership. We've been very fortunate to be re-accredited with the Silver Award for how we treat our veterans who come across the council. This is not an award that you get easily. You have to fulfil a lot of obligations as a council, and it's not just for councillors, it involves our officers as well. And a great big part of that is the amount of training that our officers receive on how they should treat veterans if they come across. Veterans are anybody who has served in the military. It can be Army, Navy or Air Force, as a reservist or as a full-time a person who's a part of the military. So they come out of the military, where whatever they've served, they may come to the council for help with housing or other needs, and therefore all of our officers, it's particularly in housing, are well trained to know what sort of offer there is for them and what the latest official is government work. Government stuff is that we need to make sure we're a part of. We were awarded a certificate once again for a Silver Award, and we're very, very proud to have that. And I think it's a very important thing that the council does. As you just mentioned, Madam Mayor, we have a wonderful Armed Forces Day, and we have a wonderful breakfast club, which was the Mayor's special charity last year. So we do a great deal of excellent work in the area, and we are recognised all over West Sussex for the amount of work we do in this area. Our other communication I'm delighted to report is this wonderful success of our Round the Lake festival that was held in Tilgate Park this weekend and has finished this evening. It went on for several evenings after the weekend. This was put on by Creative Crawley, and it was funded by the Arts Council. Now, the Arts Council is really focused on Crawley at the moment. It's taken a great interest in the cultural life of Crawley. It sees us as a place where there's a lot of work needs to be done, and there definitely is. We know that. We've already seen some fantastic things. We've had lots of pop-up events. We're trying out all sorts of new things within Crawley to see what goes down well and what works here. I'm sure you've already seen the fabulous murals that have come up in Broadfield, the town centre, in the underpass at Bewbush. They really are impressive and make a great difference to how Crawley looks. We also had a fabulous art exhibition in the library. We had 250 entries for this art exhibition, and they were all people from Crawley. Some of them were professional artists, some were children, some were adults, and if you went up to see it, the wide range of the types of art there was something for everyone. They say art is in the eye of the beholder, and there was certainly plenty of beauty to see, however you decide you like art. The event round the lake was absolutely incredible. It was something very unusual that's not been done before there. It wasn't the usual sort of entertainments. There was a dance performance on a stage set up in the woods as you walk down from the walled garden. There was installations from Go Wild that had been brought and set up around the lake. There was meet the bees. That was really fascinating, especially for the children. They loved that. There were loads of what we call beehives, but they didn't have real bees in. They had peepholes and steps for the children to stand up on, and when you look through, there were dioramas and moving things, and each one was completely different, and the kids were absolutely fascinated with them. There was a graffiti workshop, which I attended with Sunny, and it was amazing. The only trouble was it was also put together to make sure you had a healthy walk at the same time, because the graffiti workshop was on the totally other side of the lake. So we had a long walk before we did the graffiti workshop and a long walk back, and we were very lucky it didn't rain. But again, we produced over the 2 days. There was a huge great mural, and it was made with stencils and spray paints, and I'm not sure everybody would approve, but we had children with gloves on and masks on and learning to do things properly and produce something that is beautiful and not just mess on walls. The most interesting part of the festival was what we call the stories around the lake. Now, I know Councillor Burgess and Councillor Lunnan were there yesterday to experience that, and this was something totally different. You went down to the lake, you could take out a small rowing boat, old-fashioned rowing boat. Hopefully you had somebody who could row. I did, but he hadn't done it since he was 14 working on the Serpentine in London. But he hadn't forgotten, so we whizzed round very fast. We went round twice when everybody else went round once. But you sat in the boat and you had a recorded story. You could choose your story before you went with a little synopsis. There were 10 different stories, and they were all true stories, real stories by real people. And they were from all around the world, but everything had something to do with water and boats, I think. So we had an Irish story about making a coracle. There was a story about a refugee who'd come across on a boat. There was the best one, I think, probably, which I still want to read, was from Parveen Khan, who was from Crawley, and her story of how she came to Crawley, aged 4 years old, halfway across the world. So I'm really looking forward to read that one from somebody who's really local. It was a fantastic thing to go out on a lake at 7 o'clock in the evening when the park is deserted and there's nobody there. And it was so atmospheric. The atmosphere was completely still, no wind, and just these little boats floating around, all listening to stories. Absolutely magical. Not something you consider as art, but that really was a different sort of art that perhaps most of us have not experienced before. I have to say, I was there on Sunday afternoon in Tilgate Park. Now, we always talk about Tilgate Park being the jewel in the crown. It was so crowded. The whole hill was full of families having picnics. There were people on the bouncy castle. There were people fishing. There were people cycling, walking. And it just brought home to me how important that park is to our residents in Crawley. A place where you can go and enjoy peace, tranquility. If you don't want to be in a crowd, you can walk around, there's so much space, and just enjoy the outdoors, fresh air, and time with family and to reflect. I think, yes, it is the jewel in the crown, and having this festival, I think, was the icing on the cake this weekend. Thank you very much.
Thank you. On to the final element of the communications. I'm delighted now to be able to make some long service badges presentations to some serving councillors. I will now walk to the front of dais and ask the Head of Governance, People and Performance to invite each of the councillors up in turn to the dais to receive their badges.
First, can I invite Councillor Lunnan to come up to the dais to receive his 10-year badge? Next, could I invite Councillor Ayling to come to the dais to receive her badge? That was her 15-year badge. Next, can I invite Councillor Burgess to come to the dais to receive her 20-year badge? And finally, can I invite Councillor Irvine to come to the dais to receive his 25-year badge?
Thank you to the residents of Crawley for giving me the opportunity to maybe have done something good in the last 25 years. Thank you to all my council colleagues and the officers for all their support. It's been a wild ride at times, but I wouldn't have missed it for the world. Thank you.
Yes. Right. Thank you. Normally at the first ordinary full council post an election, the mayor would also present gifts to all those former councillors that recently seized office at either the May or July 2024 borough election by-election. However, all the former councillors informed the head of governance, people and performance that they would be unable to attend this meeting. And therefore, alternative arrangements have been made in terms of the receipt of their gifts, or those former councillors have declined the receipt of the gift. We will now move to item 5, public questions time, which is set for 30 minutes. I will briefly explain the procedure. I will invite each person in turn to the table at the front of the public seating area to ask their questions. Please state your name, which ward you live in, and then ask your question. Please remember that questions cannot repeat any question that has already been asked tonight or within the last 6 months. I will then invite the most appropriate councillor to reply to your question. You may then ask one supplementary question which should relate to your original question or the response given to it. Please put your hand up if you are wanting to ask a question. Yes, can you please come to the table, please? Can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Nicholas Fiends. I'm the branch convener at Gatwick Cars for Unite. Okay. Right, the questions I've got a couple of questions actually, if that's okay, because it's sort of quite broad regarding. Only one question. Okay.
And one supplementary question.
Okay. Okay. It's regarding the standards that the drivers in Crawley have to adhere to in the comparison to the rest of the boroughs around the area. I can actually list a few sort of add-ons regarding it. It's regarding the case of the point system, We're the only ones within the area that actually do the point system, which goes against us. Horsham don't. The length of the vehicles. Actually, when you bring the vehicle onto the council, it's 4 years within Crawley, 7 years Wilden. Why is that? The fact that we can't bring a vehicle on that's older than 4 years. And regarding the strict knowledge test that we have to do the councillors understand and realise that you do not have to do one in Horsham? I know that for a fact because I have a Horsham badge as well. And Reigate and Banstead, Miss Sussex, Wilden, Lewis and Wolverhampton, and the list goes on. We are the strictest in the land, and not only that, at the moment there's even another restriction we have regarding hackneys. And the hackney test that we take within Crawley, Corinne Plimpton, in her infinite wisdom, has turned around and said that if we have advisories, i.e. one of our reps went and passed the hackney test, and he got an email the next day by Joe within licensing under the directive of Corinne from before, because she'd already had a meeting with the garages because they had to inform them what was going on regarding, obviously the advisories is still a pass, but he was told that he had to do it straight away. He was not allowed, because as an advisory it still passed, but he was not allowed.
Can you please move to the question?
Yeah, why is it that we have strict guidelines and yet we have gone up a notch again? So when we get an advisory, we have to get the advisory. Oh, sorry, I was going to say, because I thought you just switched me off. Right. And it was regarding a worn tyre, not an illegal tyre, because we have 2 mil limit, so it was over 2 millimetres. Also, he had a stone chip just off centre, and he was told that he had to get it done as soon as possible, but the tyre had to be done immediately, even though it did not foul the Hackney MOT.
Thank you. In the absence, Chair of Licence, can I ask Councillor Jones to answer this question?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I think there's some very detailed questions there, and there's some specific cases that I won't comment on in a public meeting because they relate to individual circumstances, and I think that's a discussion that's best placed to be held offline. The council does have strong standards. We've always been upfront about that. We always considered, particularly in the era before cross-border was a thing, that our standards and maintaining high standards in the borough was not only important but something that we were proud of. And also, I think it also reflects that we want to have a taxi trade that is well regulated within the borough. That's important for the interests of everyone, including the trade, I would say. The point system was mentioned. That was introduced because it's transparent, and it was brought in so people didn't feel that there were arbitrary things being imposed on them or penalties being imposed on them without some kind of way to explain it and quantify it. Of course, with all these things, we are a responsive council. We are prepared to discuss and enter into these things, but ultimately, we do always have. What I can understand can be frustrating sometimes, but it is the job of this council as the local authority to regulate the trade, which means that sometimes there will be that tension. I would also say that officers are implementing the policies that this council have agreed, and so they do not implement arbitrary or policies that or things themselves. So, as I said before, if there are particular concerns about any area of the policy this council set, then we are prepared to have that dialogue and to consider these points. But saying that, I don't want anyone to feel that they're being unfairly treated, but also saying that if local authorities elsewhere aren't applying the same standards, that doesn't necessarily mean that Crawley Borough Council are the ones in the wrong. So I don't want to sound confrontational here, and as I said, we will listen to points that are made, and if a meeting is wanted with the chair of licensing and the portfolio holder, I think that's probably with officers, that's probably the appropriate way to investigate some of the points you've raised tonight, sir. Thank you.
Do you have any supplementary question?
Yeah, in the point system, we have no problem being highly regulated. We don't. We like to set the bar, and I feel as if a gap that we do set the bar even within our own borough. The vehicles we drive, the way we dress, and everything like that. And it used to be the place that you want to actually come to work. You know, all the drivers within Crawley wanted to go there. Now it doesn't seem that way, obviously, because of other reasons.
Can you
that I can't
please
really
move
go
to the
into.
question?
Yes. Right. Right, the standards, I totally agree. But surely the standards for other drivers actually working in this area, that we're not talking about cross-border, we're talking about other stuff. They should have the same standards. But if we've got standards above our standards implemented on us, as I turned around and said about the advisory, then if it's an advisory that everybody passes the MOT, no matter whether Hackney or whatever, but if you have a standard above it, then surely that isn't fair on any ground. Because the meeting was held with Corinne and the garages, and she told them to, well, I'm not going to say what she said because it could be condoned as hearsay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, this is a very specific point on an example that I'm not aware of in terms of this advisory. And I really couldn't comment on an individual. I wouldn't feel it right to comment on an individual decision in any case at full council. As I said, I'm prepared to refer this to appropriately offline, but I'm afraid I don't think I've got anything satisfactory I can say to you tonight.
Thank you.
I'd like to say congratulations to the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Richard Simon.
So, Mr. Richard Simon.
Okay. Mr. Richard Simon.
Thank you, Mayor. Richard Simons, the Ifield Society. My question is this: will this council declare an ecological emergency in Ifield Brook Meadows, west of Ifield, just as Bristol Council declared an ecological emergency in Brislington Meadows 4 years ago? There are some of you here who might think I'm scaremongering without evidence. I fear you might be wrong. There is clear evidence. Last September, dead fish were found in Bewbush Brook Water Gardens, which runs into Ifield Brook. A county paper described it as an ecological disaster. The reason why the fish died has never been made public, as far as I know. Butterflies in the meadows are feared to be reduced by 50%, and this is probably going to be confirmed on a walk on Saturday. But the most telling evidence of all is Homes England's development plans, which can be best illustrated by a map, which essentially, here's Ifield Brook Meadows in green, and there's Ifield Brook, and right along the water's edge is basically the monstrous housing development. It really doesn't need me to spell it out to you, the consequences of this insanity. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Councillor Nawaz.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for your question, Mr. Simon. Probably in the last time you asked the question as well, and you are well aware our position, full council's position on the development you mentioned in Eiffel West. But relating to your question directly over here, as you're probably aware or not, but Eiffel Brook Meadows is one of the sites which is currently the subject of a biodiversity assessment being undertaken by consultants for the council. This work is due to be completed in the autumn, following which the council will determine whether there are additional ways and means of enhancing biodiversity at the Eiffel Brook Meadows and further protecting the site in addition to the existing protections. The Crawley Borough Council local plan designate Eiffel Brook Meadows as a local green space and local wildlife site, and the Crawley local plan policies provide significant protection to the Eiffel Brook Meadows against any developments. Should a future planning application from Homes England include the proposal for the development, there within Crawley's administrative boundaries. So it's already been protected in that sense through the local plan already, but we are already also taking currently assessment on the biodiversity on that site.
Do you have any supplementary question? All right then. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions? Yes. Can you? Yeah.
It's more a clarification than a question, to be honest with you. As we've seen,
Introduce yourself.
Mohammed Azawi, one of the Unite reps here, representing the drivers of Gatwick.
Sorry, which ward?
Neighbourhood, Kinwood Vale. I'm really sorry, I'm not part of Crawley.
Okay.
Okay. Have I got the right to ask a question, or there's no issue?
No, that's fine.
Thank you. As I said, it's a clarification more than a question, to be honest with you. And as Gatwick drivers, we work with high standards. And I believe Crawley Borough Council, as well as Councillor Jones explained at the start. But my question is really simple and easy. Since we started this rally of Uber and we're trying to get the law of the land imposed on them, we had 3 checks from Crawley Borough Council, licensing department. Would I have any clarification? Where is that? Well, we haven't seen them for years and years since we started, until we started this.
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm not entirely sure what's been suggested, but there will from time to time be checks on all areas of the trade, I would say, and I'm almost 100% certain that none of it had anything to do with anything that that might have been raised in relation to this.
Do you have any supplementary question?
The question is simple. Since, as I said, since we started the rally of Uber out of town, I haven't heard that Crawley Licence Department has approached any driver locally. They haven't approached Uber drivers, PCR licence. They approach Gatwick drivers. And I think a big question mark in there, and I would love to have clarification. As Mr. Jones said earlier, we don't mind sitting at a table and having our question answered as well.
Thank you. It's noted. Thank you. Any other questions? No? Yes, please. Can you please introduce yourself?
Hi, Ashley Spears from Langley Green. My question is, there was a letter from licensing sent to Gatwick, and have we had any response from that in terms of regards to Uber.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jones.
Madam Mayor, I think this is referring to the correspondence that the licensing committee agreed that we would send to the various different organisations and government. At the moment, we've only just completed the investigation into the issues that have been raised in relation to the private hire operations at Gatwick Airport, and it would have been wrong to have sent the letter before we had all that information at our disposal in order to do that. So the answer is we haven't got a response yet. Now we have been able to come to a view in terms of that investigation, and our officers are working with our legal advisor to consider the council's options. We can't comment further on the detail until that legal advice is received, but I can assure the questioners this is not standing still, and appropriate action will be taken. And indeed, when that action is taken, we will also be making sure that that the individual organisations and agencies and government departments are written to with that updated position to reflect what we have discovered. Thank you very much.
Do you have any supplementary question?
That the investigation is quickly and thorough, because when winter approaches, our trade is going to suffer massively. I don't think you guys really understand how long we wait. Cool.
We'll now deal with agenda item 6, consideration of full council recommendations and call-in decisions. There are 2 recommendations under this item from the committees before the council this evening. Both of the recommendations come from the Governance Committee held on meeting on 10th June 2024. Recommendation 1, nominations for appointment of Honorary Aldermen and Alderwomen and Honorary Freemen, Freewomen, starting on page 35. Councillor Lannan, please introduce this recommendation from Governance Committee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And first of all, just harking back, I didn't realise we were allowed to speak on our service award, so I'd just like to thank the people of Broadfield for continuing to elect me for the last 10 years and thank them for the honour that they've given me. Moving on to the recommendation, this is that the full council is to recommend that we amend the protocol on Aldermen and Alderwomen, which we haven't really been using for the last sort of 8 or so years, and Honorary Freemen and Freewomen, so that if any of them are elected again, the ones that we appointed last Friday, or indeed any that we appoint in the future, that they won't be addressed as Aldermen or Alderwomen or take any part in any civic ceremonies as Aldermen or Alderwomen if they are re-elected to the council. I don't think that's likely to happen with any of the 3 Aldermen or Alderwomen who are appointed, but it's good to get some clarity on that. I would just also like to take this opportunity to thank the staff and those councillors who organised the event on Friday. I thought it was a tremendous success. It went really well. From my opinion, I thought there were excellent contributions from both sides of the chamber on some excellent former councillors. So just like to take the opportunity to say thank you for those who organised that, and especially the section after was a complete surprise, with sort of Councillor Jones acting as a live TV host, going to different parts of the council chamber and us all following him around. That was excellent. So, yeah. But otherwise, I formally move recommendation 1. Thank you.
Councillor Burke, I believe you are seconding the recommendation.
I formally second the recommendation and reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
I will now open up the debate to the floor. Yeah. Councillor Burke, as there are no further speakers. Okay, there are no further speakers. Councillor Lannan, please formally move the recommendation.
I formally move.
I call for a vote on recommendation 1, starting on page 35. Is that agreed, or would you like a vote on it? Agreed. Thank you. We will consider the final recommendation 2, appointment of independent persons, starting on page 36. Councillor Lannan, please introduce this recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Me again. Sorry for that. So, for those of you who are new to the council, you might be unaware of the role of independent people, but they are a crucial cornerstone in our democracy in that they keep standards to check and keep an eye on what's going on as sort of a neutral representative that aren't involved in party politics. Now, I'm quite intrigued to know, and I don't necessarily know if I'll get the answer, but Peter Nicholson's been an independent person longer than I've been a councillor, and I've just received a 10-year award, so I don't know what award Peter Nicholson should be getting as an independent person. Probably quite a big one, but nevertheless, he's been a stalwart of this council, an essential part, and actually for a period was our only independent person, so we are forever grateful for Peter's service, because unlike the rest of us who have sort of might enjoy this environment, he willingly comes along voluntarily to have to listen to all of us and doesn't get any right of reply. So it really is a thankless task that he performs. But nevertheless, he's for some reason decided he wants to do it for another 2 years at least. So we're very grateful for that. And this recommendation simply asks that the full council agree with us in governance. So we want to appoint Peter Nicholson for another 2 years, and I'd fully hope that everybody does. And so I formally move.
Thank you. Councillor Burke, I believe you are seconding the recommendation?
Yeah, formally second.
I will now open up the debate to the floor. The speakers, Councillor Jones. Oh, Councillor Jones. Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to express my personal pleasure that Peter's chosen to continue or has kindly offered to continue. A lot of people get time off for good behaviour, but it seems in Peter's case it's the reverse. But it's a huge pleasure to us all, and he's undoubtedly enriched public life in this borough over the years he served. Thank you.
There are no further speakers. Councillor Lennon, please formally move the recommendation.
I formally move the recommendation. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. It's done, yeah. Okay, I'll just, yep. Is that agreed, or would you like a vote on it? Thank you. Before we move to the next item, please, I ask that we record the Council's thanks to Mr. Nicholson for his long service of over 17 years as our independent person. Thank you, Peter. We now move to the item 7, results of Maidenbower Borough by-election, July 2024. This item is an information item. That being said, do you all agree to receive the returning officer's report on the result of the Maidenbower Borough by-election held on 4th July 2024 as set out on page 45 in tonight's agenda? Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. The next item is Councillors' question time. We have 30 minutes for this item. We have received no written questions submitted in advance. So I'll now open the floor to any councillors wishing to ask a question of either cabinet members or committee chairs. Please note that where possible, we will rotate requests between parties. Please indicate now. Councillor Crowe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is to Councillor Irvine. Just trying to see where he is. Thank you. Firstly, congratulations, Ian, on your 25 years long service award. There's yourself, Councillor Mullins, and Councillor Lanza, who are longer than my 21 years, but I'm hoping one day I might be a father of the chamber. My question is asking you, would you agree to undertake to see how viable it could be potentially for our sheltered housing to have video entry intercom systems? Currently, for the masonettes, you'll be aware across the town we've got various blocks. You know, so for Fern's Green, for example, we've got Brunswick Court and Ferns Court. There's one in Northgate I know of. There's one in West Green where we have blocks of 6 masonettes in a block of 6, and they currently have an entry system which is just simply a buzzer. This came to light with a a constituent of mine who has hearing difficulties and who has to lip read. And of course, more and more people are getting deliveries, home deliveries of parcels these days, and sometimes people could buzz another flat or another masonette to be able to gain entry. And it's just crossed my mind that it would perhaps help to provide reassurance for our older residents in sheltered housing, for all of them, regardless of their hearing or not, if they were able to see. I appreciate you can't just change it for one individual household in masonettes. They tend to be all six together. But could I ask you, please, to have a look and to see how potentially viable making such a change could be? I appreciate it's not an easy undertaking, that there could be some cost, but just really to look into it to see whether it could be potentially be viable. Thank you.
You were very much your suggestion, Councillor Crowe. I will certainly take that up and look into it with the relevant officials of Crawley Homes.
Come back, Madam Mayor, to thank Councillor Irvine for his question. Asking if, obviously, I look forward for hearing from you in due course. Thank you.
Councillor Hilton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I noted there's a council press release, I think it was in late May, concerning the new penalties regime which has been introduced by the council in line with Schedule 12, the 2021 Environmental Act, which in turn amended the 1993 Clean Air Act. I was quite interested in this particular piece of legislation because it's about monitoring clean air and chimney emissions in the borough, particularly as a ward councillor. On the Forge side of us, Forge Wood, there's literally, across the railway tracks, a range of established industrial units. And over the last few weeks, a number of residents have contacted me with concerns about chimney emissions and industrial odours in the area. And obviously, without going into the specific cases, is this the type of scenario and eventuality that this new penalty regime should be applied to? I should mention I am going to be asking this question to, wait for it, Councillor Bob Noyce, who is the Cabinet Member for Environment, Sustainability and Climate Change.
Right. Thank you very much, Councillor Hilton. And if I'd known you were going to ask me that, I'd have been listening. But seriously speaking, though, the answers to your questions, and forgive my sore throat. The new civil penalty powers for emissions of smoke are only enforceable in smoke control areas, SCAs. Most of Crawley is covered by smoke control orders introduced in the 1960s and 70s. However, the smoke control order for Three Bridges, which covers Manor Royal and Crawley Goods Yard, specifically exempts industrial units. Therefore, these new powers are not applicable to the industrial units of Manor Royal. Industrial processes are nonetheless covered by other regulations under the Environmental Permitting England and Wales Regulations 2016. Industrial installations are subject to an environmental permitting regime which sets emission limit values and other conditions permit holders must meet. Your residents from Forge Wood are probably inquiring about the asphalt plant on Crawley Goods Yard. This plant roadstone coating process has an environmental permit which controls the emissions to atmosphere, and the only visible emissions permitted from this source is steam. Air quality in the area. The council has a network of 51 sites across the borough to monitor nitrogen dioxide pollution levels. There are two sites close to Forge Wood, Radford Road and Steers Lane, and a site close to the Goods Yard on Gatwick Road outside of the Gatwick School. All these sites have measured nitrogen dioxide annual average levels well below the national air quality limit value for the last 5 years. So is the legislation considered sufficiently robust to act as a deterrent? The government has made it clear that it expects local authorities with smoke control areas to enforce restrictions which apply within those areas using these new powers. The council should, as far as practicable, exercise its powers in a way which improves air quality, and therefore repeated fines for persistent offenders should act as a deterrent. However, where persistent smoke causes a nuisance, local authorities can also issue an abatement notice under Section 80 of the Environmental Protection Act 1990 to prevent further nuisance. Breaching an abatement notice is a criminal offence and is therefore a more robust deterrent for situations where there is sustained non-compliance of the legislation. And what I'll do, Councillor Hilton, I'll send those details through to you. And if you've got any further questions, we can discuss. Thank you very much.
Supplementary, that's kind of been answered. I was asking whether it was sufficiently robust enough to act as a deterrent, and I think you've answered the question for me. So thank you very much, Councillor Norris. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Councillor Burgess.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question has just popped into my head, and it's regarding, straight to Councillor Sue Mullins. Brilliant report, thank you. As you know, my husband, the former Councillor Bob Burgess, was mayor when the covenant was signed, so he'll be delighted to hear that we've been awarded a silver. My question is, what more do we have to do to get a gold?
Thank you, Councillor Burgess. We have discussed this in the military partnership at quite a length, as you can imagine. Going from bronze to silver was a big jump. To go from silver to gold is a much bigger jump, and there's an awful lot of more hoops that we have to jump through. That doesn't mean we don't want to try, and we will continue to look at it and see if it's a possibility for the council. But, you know, I think we outshine most of the local councils around here for the facilities that we offer for our veterans, and I'm very proud of that. But there's always more that we can do, and to see our breakfast club growing in strength. And I mean, I had a resident rang me the other day with a totally different problem on there, and he happened to mention that he had served in the forces. And I said, have you heard about the breakfast club? Do you know about it? You know what this organisation does? He'd not heard of it at all. He lived in Crawley. He'd been a long time resident here. He'd been a personal security officer. He'd been all over the world, but he didn't know that that existed. So I was able to put him in touch, and I've already heard back from him saying, thank you very much for putting me in touch. I went along, and they were really supportive and helpful. So the more we can broadcast what we actually do as a council and what connections we have outside the council that support our veterans, I think there's always more to be done. So thank you very much for the question, and let's hope we can one day achieve the gold, because I'd like to see that.
Do you have any supplementary question?
Just to say, do we know of any other council around that might have a gold, or because it'd be great to be the first one if we haven't.
I think you'd have to speak to one of the officers called John Dale, he's the man who knows about everything. But as far as I know, no one around here has gold. It's quite an elusive thing to get. Very, very elusive.
Thank you. Councillor Patel.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is for Councillor Mullins, Cabinet Member for Leisure and Wellbeing. So Friends of Goffs Park have organised a community picnic on Sunday, 4th of August. A fun day full of music, dance and a live band. And I know some of my fellow councillors are eagerly looking forward to attending, as am I. And we are lucky in Crawley to have such fantastic green spaces for the whole community. But it is important and it is right that we continue to have a high standard of management of these outdoor recreational areas. And with that in mind, my question to Councillor Mullins is, do you have an update on the renewal of the Green Flag Awards for our parks? Thank you.
Yes, of course I do. Can I say, first of all, I'm rather sad that as it's August the 4th, and we have a little child, we tend to go on holiday in August because that's when the summer holidays from schools are. So I've got to miss that event on August the 4th, but I would canvass everybody here to attend and give good support to that event and consequently give good support to Goffs Park and its activities. Goffs Park's a marvellous park, and if I get a separate question on that, I'll go through the detail of some of the activities on Goffs Park. As far as the green flag's concerned, this year we have been awarded 5 green flags, and Tilgate Park has had its status now for an incredible 22 years. It's quite amazing, really. So the list is: Tilgate Park has been awarded a green flag, Goffs Park has been awarded a green flag, the Memorial Gardens has been awarded a green flag, Worth Park has been awarded a green flag, and Ifield Mill Pond has been awarded a green flag. I would also say to people, members, go and look at these places. Because if you want to know Crawley and the beauty of Crawley, know why we get these green flags. Go and have a look at what you can see there, the beauty, the design, and actually the hard workmanship that's actually put in by our staff. Because we must never ever forget that you can't make those parks and areas beautiful from an office. You can only do it in the park with a fork and a spade. And our lads and lassies that work our parks and gain these green flags for us are, I think, the town's heroes. I really do respect them a great deal. They work hard, and most of all, when I meet them, and I met them this week, they're doing something they love doing. They love working our parks and making our parks look so beautiful. So if you want to feel proud of Crawley, take your relatives around and show them our wonderful areas. You'll do nothing better than walk across Ifield Mill Pond on the boardwalk and then go around and see all the beautiful areas around there. Worth Park is great for its historic values and its Victoriana. The Memorial Gardens, I was down there this week, it's just absolutely looking superb with its wonderful up-to-date growth and colours. It looks lovely. And Tilgate Park, where we were yesterday, Sue and I mean, it just looks magnificent. And this cannot happen by accident. It happens because our employees do it. Thank you to those employees. We must pass that thanks on. We could not have these 5 flags without them. So they do that on behalf of us all. So I can only say thank you again.
Have any supplementary question, Councillor Patel?
No, thank you for sharing the news.
Councillor Lanza.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And my question is to Councillor Nawaz as Cabinet Member for Planning and Economic Development. So today we heard the King's Speech, and included within the King's Speech was the Planning and Infrastructure Bill, which is in part designed to accelerate the delivery of housing and major infrastructure projects. Now, there have been rumours about perhaps reduced rights for local authorities to determine large-scale applications. Given that this bill is likely to become an act, can we have his assurance that whatever comes in this legislation, is he going to continue to sustain opposition to the west of Ifield development, especially given that we now have a Labour MP who could conceivably be whipped to vote for this particular bill? Will he nevertheless guarantee to represent Crawley in Parliament rather than have the Labour Party policy represented in Crawley?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Lanza, for your question. I'm sure we all heard the King's Speech today, and we have to wait for the details to come through to us. But in terms of your question about the development on Ifield West, I believe it's all known to everybody, and I answered the question to earlier as well. Our full council's position is very, very clear. So until we get the details on King's Speech, it's very difficult for me to comment at this point in time what powers has been handed over to the local authorities or what powers has taken away from the local authorities. So I'll be quite happy to get more details, and if I got as soon as the answers from the officers, I will pass on the answer to you as well. Thank you.
Question, Councillor Lanza.
Answer.
Thank you. Councillor Ramsey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question was intended for Yasmin Khan, the Cabinet Member for Public Protection. So essentially, given the choice by the new government to release prisoners early, I'm just wondering what risks do you envisage potentially popping up for the people and property of Crawley?
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for your question, Councillor Ramsey. I mean, it's quite clear from all the news coverage that this was a decision that the previous Conservative government had dragged its feet on for some considerable time, to the point that that Rishi Sunak had been warned that by the Cabinet Secretary that he was in danger of not meeting legal obligations to address this. I don't think that the state of the prison system that the previous government has left this country in is an ideal circumstance in any rate. But saying that, a lot of these issues that you raise are governmental responsibilities and things that will have to be sorted out by the Department of Justice and the Home Office that we have very little influence over. My understanding, such as it is, of what has been proposed in the detail is that although there will be some early releases, it has been assessed to be lower risk offenders who will be released. But in terms of any particular issues, that would be a matter of the Safer Crawley Partnership to consider. But again, it would be on. It wouldn't. Some of the levels, you might be well advised to get yourself along to the Sussex Police and Crime panel and ask Casey Bourne, because that certainly seems to be the level of the seriousness of what we now face.
Do you have any supplementary question?
Not so much supplementary. I mean, yeah, we can all point fingers, but I think it is fair to interrogate the people actually making the decision. And I appreciate that's not members opposite. But just to reiterate, so you think essentially low risk. 'Cause obviously, I think there will be people in Crawley concerned by this decision. So I just want to know the view of the Crawley Cabinet. Is it that low risk rather than high risk, or no risk?
I don't think Councillor Ramsey's asking the right person, Madam Mayor. These are issues for the police. These are issues for the government, and so I can't answer other than I can imagine everyone across the country is deeply concerned about the situation that the prison system has been allowed to get into. It is a national scandal.
Thank you. Councillor Imtiaz Khan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is for Councillor Nawaz, the Cabinet Member for Planning and Economic Development. When talking to many residents over the past few months, a key theme emerged was a serious concern of theirs regarding the number of vacant offices and retail units across the whole of Crawley, including the industrial area, but in particular the town centre and local shopping parades in individual areas. Could Councillor Nawaz please share with full council the number of empty units in Crawley town centre, the average length of time they've remained unoccupied, and if he has in place any incentives for businesses to operate within them, and if he has in place any penalties potentially for landlords, for example, in the form of tapered increase in business rates for empty units which remain unoccupied for prolonged periods of time, incentivising landlords to rent out those units.
Thank you. Thanks, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Khan, for your question. I think this question, I think I was asked last time, maybe a few months ago, in the full council as well. Just to reassure you, our vacancy rate in the town centre for the retail units is actually below the national average. So we are not in a bad place when you look at it. We all know what the mess we have seen. Economy is in a very, very bad condition in the last decade or so. That's why all businesses are struggling, and the people how they shop is changing as well. So that's why the model shift in the business sector, especially the retail, is going through massively, and hence business are changing, different business practices, different business model they're bringing in. But good thing is Crawley is in demand. Crawley is definitely, we had numbers from town centre bid, which I presented a few months ago, as I said, and it shows us Crawley is well ahead of neighbouring towns in terms of footfall, in terms of vacancy rate, and how the business is booming in Crawley. Crawley, like, I'll give you one example. There was a shop next to McDonald's, empty. It was gone. I think it's Mountain Meher House or whatever. It was captured very, very quickly. So the small businesses are very interested in Crawley. As I said, town centre bid numbers are really good. When I'm coming to your other questions on the office space, actually, when you look at the numbers, that's quite in demand as well. You know, and Crawley has been seen within the Gatwick Diamond sector, one of the area which we've been seeing. Crawley has been seen as one of the prime area to provide the business space, office A-grade units, and there's a demand in Crawley for A-grade office space. Hence, our Create building is well in demand, and we are talking to a lot of potential businesses and for the office space to be taken over. And good example for that is British Holidays has taken over the top floor, and 2 other companies have already signed the lease, and others we are talking to. So hopefully that will be gone very quickly as well. So all in all, Crawley is actually working very well through where we were in the pandemic. We were one of the worst hit council, but we're now actually recovering quite well. And this thanks to the officers and obviously the strategy the administration put through for the people to attract to Crawley, for the inward investment is really working well for Crawley. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any supplementary question?
Yes, I do. With regards to the second part of the question, which I initially asked, are there any specific incentives for businesses to try and take on some of those empty retail units? And have you got in the pipeline any concerns or any initiatives to, for example, in a residential sector, if a residential property remains empty, from my understanding is we charge double council tax potentially to those landlords. Is there something similar you're thinking or possibly could apply to the retail sector to try and encourage them to at least give new businesses a chance to go there? Otherwise, the rates will be increased for them, making it more incentives for them to give out the shop rather than just leaving it empty just as an investment portfolio for them.
Thank you for your question. Just to reassure you one thing, where the council owns parades, right? The council has a lot of parades throughout within the council area, and none of the shop is actually either empty or something. If there is an empty shop there is some work going on, and there's a lot of interest on those shops. So I can assure you, the council's own properties are well in demand, and there's nothing there, which is, we say, empty. But other properties, as you mentioned, there are private properties, private landlords, but there's a national legislation needed for that as well. I'm hoping for the new government coming in now, and they were talking about the overhaul system of business rates, which was long overdue. It's not been done in the last decade or so. A lot of previous governments, they just kept deferring it. But now we got the government in there, so hopefully, I'm hoping, like you should be as well. So these things will be now bring forward, and this will kickstart the business to get invested into Crawley. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Crowe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Further questions, we've just got time and there's no other questioners. My question's to the leader, Councillor Jones. I'm sure you'll join with me in congratulating the England men's football team on their fantastic performance during the recent European Championships, and in particular, of course, their manager, Gareth Southgate, who has now stepped down as England's manager. My question is, when can we perhaps get together and have a good look at what potentially we could do to recognise Gareth Southgate within Crawley. There has been some talk of this previously when he's done really well in previous tournaments, and there have been various ideas suggested, but I do think, and I've written today's fantastic Crawley Observer, my column about that we ought to be recognising Gareth Southgate in some way, and I'm sure we would all support something that is long-lasting and appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Crowe. On this side, we're tremendously proud of what Gareth Southgate and the England team have achieved. He grew up here in Crawley, went to school here, he learned a lot of his football here. And we are keen to recognise his achievements, but this would need to be at a time and in a way that Gareth himself is comfortable with. And I think rushing to him straight after he stood down is probably not the right time to be having those conversations. We look forward to having that conversation with him as and when he's able and ready to do that. But the other thing I'd add here is that Gareth is notoriously modest. We know that from previous discussions, and there have been attempts in the past to recognise him. So it would have to be finding what was right under all the circumstances. But rest assured, such as with the Crawley Town result recently, we're very keen to recognise those achievements in the best way we can.
Do you have any supplementary question?
Suggesting that anything would be rushed as such. I did sort of say and as appropriate. I recognise it is not an easy thing to do, but certainly I and the Conservative Group would want to be a sort of, it should be something on behalf of the entire council, and we would be interested in being able to offer any suggestions as any ideas. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. That's the end of councillor's question. I call upon the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Hart, to move receipt of the report of the meetings set out in the agenda item 6 on page 21 and in the associated supplementary agenda.
I move that the reports of the Overview and Scrutiny Commission, Planning Committee, Governance Committee and Licensing Committee be received. Is that agreed? Agreed.
There are no further items for debate, and as there is also no further supplementary items of business, I declare the meeting of the Council now closed. Thank you.